podcast listeners, if you hear my voice right now, I need you to do something for me. I want you to take out your phone or on your computer, go to Apple Podcasts, search for Ask Your Oldhead podcast. You'll see my logo, my little picture, my little image there. Find the show. Please rate and write a review. It's a small thing, but it helps others find this work and find what I'm doing here. And it really, really matters, as small as that may seem. So if you can please do that before we get into the show, I would much appreciate it. Thank you for listening. Let's get into it. Peace. Peace. I'm Majestic.
My brother, Justice Rajee.
Man, so today I thought we could have a conversation. Both I've returned from some, I guess, travels. Mine more regional, local, and related to work. Yours more international, and related to, I would say, positive experiences and good times. And
Thing of ours, yeah.
You know what I'm saying, and both places start with a P, but they're definitely not the same place. So I thought it might be just good just to let's have a moment to talk about. So sometimes we always discuss the importance of travel and moving in place, but also what you experience and what you learn. By being where other people are being who they be. So, I lead off. My place with a P was Pendleton, Oregon, where I had the opportunity due to a work activity to have to travel to the Pendleton Roundup. Let her buck. That's the saying. They got a big sign out there. You see it, and it's one of the biggest. I don't know if it's one of the biggest rodeos in the country, and it's a big cultural. I think it's over 122 years. 100 years.
Just for context, just how far is Pendleton from Portland?
Pendleton,
like, I'm saying? I'm assuming it's going east, right?
Yeah, it's going east. So Pendleton is kind of like the hub spot of northeastern. I think I'm accurate in saying that. If somebody from Oregon see it different, you can let me know. Northeastern Oregon, and it is about 200 miles east.
Okay.
Approximately, give or take a little bit. And it's when you're heading east in Oregon, you go along the Columbia, and then there's a point where the Columbia kind of bends up and away, and then you keep going, about another 30 miles or so from there, and you hit Hermiston, Pendleton, and of course the Confederated tribes of the Umatilla, Cayuse, and the Walla Walla is also right there, because all of that land is the ancestral homeland of those folks, those people, and others, or range. I think was the right terminology. Space that they inhabited up along the Columbia and down into the Central Oregon. Before you get to the Wallawas or get to the Wallawas actually too. But that's a whole nother story. I'm gonna get out there at some point. I haven't been there. But so the roundup is big rodeo. For those who don't know, rodeo, and then basically it's a competition, it's a sport. Rodeo is a sport. They have rodeos. You see like the bull riding and the horse bucking, the catching the steers, and the lariat situations, but it's also all stuff derived from cattle ranching, horse raising, sheep, doing ranch related farming vocation activities, and so with that it also becomes a place of celebration for those who are involved in ranching and related agricultural realities, and then as everything that once something becomes a celebration, or it also then becomes a cultural hub and a connection point for folks that are involved in those worlds. So it's a really big deal here. The city of Pendleton, we wouldn't consider it a city by the population context, but it is the one of the bigger cities in as you're heading east in Oregon, especially the north, the
Is it
northeast side.
is it the type of place where, because real or imagined, we had these ideas of these like ranching towns, mining towns, like especially in the West, right? I would say probably like Utah and over, where it's like general store. uh, you know, someone selling like a side of a cow.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the sheriff emblems. You know what I'm saying? Like, is it one of them places that feeds off of that? Because I would say even when I went to Park City in Utah, it, Park City is 45 minutes from Salt Lake City. I mean, it's not far, but it totally plays off of this idea of what it used to look like, right?
Mhm.
So I didn't know if Pendleton had a similar kind of energy.
They have, I mean, they are definitely what you would, I think, and I used to like in a rural context, like a big town. So so like I did like an underground tour. So they're like, they got a main street with like several, they don't have one brick building. They got a lot of brick buildings. You know what I'm saying? Like it was so they don't play off of like the small like town, like Western town energy, but they
Yeah.
definitely play, tap into the idea that like, yeah, this is old, this is, used to be, like it was one of the things in the tour we took. They talk about like, they didn't have a sheriff till 1902 or something. And so then before then it was lawless, like, anything
Right.
could happen. You know what I mean? A little bit of that energy. But it was definitely like this is the biggest town in range. Because any town that's bearing off of here is smaller. You know what I'm saying? So they might have a little bit more of that like old prospector, what you see at an amusement park, like log flume ride type like that caricature of what
Yeah,
a
that's
what
what
a
I'm
rural
saying. So
town
like,
looks
yeah,
like.
that's how you think about these places, like
It's some
these places like
sarsaparilla. You know what I'm saying?
exactly where like the whiskey's extra strong and saying it's like the drink named Dick Dastardly or something like what I'm
Right,
saying,
right.
like it's
Yeah, I
like
was
that kind of yeah.
yeah, I think it definitely like, they tap into the, there's like actually it's by where you saw a picture of the hat. The hats I was checking out and the boots, so they got like the Western store and like a place you can get a big ass steak, you know what I'm saying? Like, but then also it's Oregon, so there's a whiskey distillery, you know what I'm saying? There's brew pub that does beer, there's another place does a dirt bikes, and then they like set up like, so when rodeo comes there's lots of temporary businesses and stuff that open up like any other like big festival. They close off the street, there's rides and stuff. It's a whole thing, you know what I'm saying? It's music
Gotcha.
performers, you know what I mean? But so during rodeo is not the same as, I mean, I've been out to Pendleton earlier this year for a conference, which was great because got to kind of get a contrast to like Pendleton regular day, Pendleton during roundup. You know what I'm saying? And it's definitely a different experience. Schools closed during roundup because so folks can.
Because all the kids is involved.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So it's
Here's
a
what
whole
everyone
deal.
wants to know, Just.
Okay.
Here's what all the listeners want to know. Is it black people in Pendleton?
Yeah, I mean, it's mattering here and there. You know what I'm saying? It's Eastern Oregon is. I mean, Eastern Oregon, Eastern Washington, Idaho are not states that are known for their robust. Well, I guess these whole, like I said, Eastern, the whole state, African American population. However, there's even back to even the one of the first champions of the Pendleton Roundup was black man George Fletcher, considered the people's champ, and so there's always, you know, it ain't a lot of places where there's never ever any black folks, but just the realities of the exclusion laws, and just even that it takes me into my first, sort of like little touchstone. I wanted to talk about the experience. The thinking about is that like every place that you go, it has a history, right? That is unique to like why that place exists. And I would say, at least in my experience and in talking to other folks, I think that they're embracing the reality that yeah, the Oregon's got a past that it didn't include certain folks. You know what I mean? You know, and then even in some of the tour, we went to like the what's the name museum, this underground museum, which was pretty fun. You know, but you know the Chinese presence in Eastern Oregon, and that after the Chinese Exclusion Act in 1882 and the subsequent decades after that, that you know physically the presence of the folks who helped to build a lot of the infrastructure, you know, that supported the you know the export of the commodity crops and whatnot. You know, them folks was forced to leave, and it's shameful. Um, and at this time, I see that it seems like they're doing a pretty good job of like owning that and talking about it when you know look around at the historical touchstones and markers and stuff like that. I don't know if that was. I would imagine just like you know where we grew up, that wasn't always the case to talk about who was displaced so that you could do this thing like going to what's the joint and you get the birch beer outside of not Lancaster, the other one. Uh
Not Reading.
Doylestown is the one I'm
Yeah.
thinking of. Yeah, you go and they're like, oh, that's the so and so house. And you're like, what is some native? Was some indigenous people here before? Like, y'all telling me about birch beer, like y'all came up with it, like
Right.
out of
No,
nowhere, right?
like you actually came up with root beer and birch beer. Like even that conversation, right? Like think about to your point about this, every place has a history, just this brief thing. Just as you shared this, growing up as a kid, I always thought root beer and birch beer was just like some shit that existed. Like never thought that like, wait, indigenous people created this. It was alcoholic. You took it, obscured them from what it was, and then sold it back to everybody
Yeah,
with no relationship to the actual origin story.
yeah. It's like, oh,
Right? Like it was a beer. It was not like it's called root beer and birch beer for a reason. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that it was a native creation based on their society in which they shared. There's an infamous story about building a big building in Memorial Park in Philadelphia, where the indigenous for the native folks shared. Like this was the first time that some white folks had birch beer and root beer,
mm,
and they were building this building, and everybody was getting a little tipsy. People started falling off the top of the building. And so that's what led, and plus the temperance movement led white folks to start taking the alcohol out of
out of the beer,
root
out of the
beer and
birch
birch
beer,
beer.
root beer. Got it,
Yeah,
got it.
but
Yeah.
still try to keep the flavor. So pardon me, just
Nah, but it's still it's like you know, so when you go in and even you know, and I was there. I mean, you know, like everything when you ain't never been to something, you have apprehensions, you might have concerns. Some of those may be founded, right, based on the realities of American history, sundown towns. You know, like at a I don't remember the exact timing, but you know, a couple things you can read it. You know, talk about they had sundown laws, especially for the Chinese residents who were there, and like they couldn't be outside after dusk. So like they be in the underground in the basements, you know, of Pendleton, you know, hiding from sight. Like it's you know, so all this stuff happened, right? You know, but then the other things too, what I thought about as important about that history is the reality of the history of also like the presence people sort of lived experience of what their space and their town means, and then like you know I don't want to bleed into my second touchstone if I give you space to add on you know about one of yours, but the like when you're going somewhere into an event like this, you know as we say like go somewhere and you do the knowledge, like don't just first time you show up somebody place be like I'm gonna start telling everybody what I think, like nah man shut up and be here for a second and see what's going on. So it was really you know it was a great experience, and you know had you know good time, and I'm gonna add on well, a couple other things that I
yeah,
thought about, but I wanted to you know give you a chest pass for
yeah.
one of your
So I
first
guess
insights.
I'm the other P here. So took a trip to Paris, the past couple weeks. Just hadn't experienced it, and took Azania as a gift for her 25th birthday. So we wanted to experience the city, and it had some cultural significance in our family about Paris or whatever. So we wanted to go, and I guess the first thing I'll bring up is this idea of algorithms and assumptions. And what I mean by that is that if you're on social media, it's probably a good chance that someone has put together a clip. You've seen a clip of someone being in a city, right? And they show you 45 seconds of different pictures and videos, and they put it together and they frame for you what that thing is, right? And so then if you like that, there's a good chance that the algorithm will then show you another place very similar by a very similar content creator, right? It is the nature of the attention economy that we have discussed. Um, so it's a thing if you start to see what these places look like only through the curated ideas of those who want to show you a place for 45 seconds, right? It's very similar to like when everyone goes to resorts now, they show you the airplane, they show you they show you them when they're getting in the car, they show you the car, they show you the resort, and they show you going in their room and then show you the water, right?
Right. They may show you a cocktail or something like
They
the
show you
cocktail
cocktail.
in the seat.
No one shows you TSA where they took everything from you and made you wait in a long line, or no one shares, when you had to get off and people maybe in that country started asking you for money, nor that the only people that work in the place are black or people of color, depending on where you're from. You know what I mean? So it curates this idea, and you have to get away from that. To me, for me, when I got there, and I knew better in the broader sense, but I definitely had to frame for myself, like, what was I expecting? You know what I mean? And not expecting the curated view of Paris versus, because Paris is everything you've seen in the videos and a whole bunch of other shit. You know what I mean? It's like all of it, and that's the thing I think you share with very large cities, New York, London, Paris, um, you know, like global cities. This idea that like it's all the stuff that you've seen and a whole bunch of stuff that you haven't seen. And you have to get out of the algorithm of the assumption of like when you go, it's all going to be Louis Vuitton bags everywhere. Or it's going to be Dior bag. You know what I mean? Like that's not the reality of it. Yes, there's a strip of stores like that often because the maison or the house is from France or something. So obviously it's going to be a little different, but that's not what everyone is walking around doing every day. Right. And so just the importance of getting out of the algorithm and looking to see a place as it is. And I think I'll talk a little bit about that in a future point. But being open to seeing a place as it exists, not as it has been curated, frankly, for an American and more importantly, Black American perspective when you go there.
Yeah, I think I think that's interesting. And just in case anybody's like Paris and Pendleton, yes, I understand these are fantastically different places.
But they
Paris,
both start with P.
yeah, both start with a P. You know what I'm saying? We both went to them,
And we both went, so
yeah,
that
mutually
they're
exclusive.
relative.
So that's how they connect. um, but it is definitely. I mean, even what we had started with even you asking, like, does the town lean into that sort of like cartoon idea of like a rural western city, that a western town or whatever, and it takes me to sort of my second thing that I thought about was out there is that like even small places aren't exempt from the people stuff, right? So the people's sort of perceptions and assumptions or thoughts about what something should or shouldn't be, right? Not necessarily it's like you could have a hammer and you use a hammer, use a hammer, put in nails. But it's like, well, it got this thing on the back. Oh, you take nails out. And then, then somebody be like, I use it to break ice. And like, I do small demolition with my hammer. You know what I mean? Like the tool and the implement, like it's kind of subject to what people do in the way. And I imagine, and I usually try to do this, especially as I've had more forays, into Eastern Oregon, the cold, more outdoor spaces to like try to see if you go on like Instagram and try to like look for what people are posting about that place versus like what you would see if you're looking for like a city, and you get like, oh, look at this waterfall and look at this other thing. Maybe you get like it's a cute dog or something, right? Like, but it's still shaped within like people's assumptions about what that place is supposed to be, maybe not what it actually is. Right. So the end of the day, part of the importance of a city like Pendleton, like the roundup and the rodeo, is it like the rodeo is a competition, but there's also like farm and ranch stuff happening, like related to running farms and ranches. You know what I'm saying? And the winter wheat getting ready and the corn going out. Like the city of Pendleton exists in the larger sense because of the economy that's around it, right? And the people stuff related to that, from what institutions the people needed to, dealing with, settler reality. You know what I'm saying? The prominence that the tribes in the area and in the region have, and the control they have in influencing what the rodeo is today and what the event is today versus maybe what it was like decades ago. You know what I'm saying? Where maybe it wasn't as centered on them, quite frankly, or their voice was not as prominent or as powerful. So like even no place escapes our people stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like whatever we're thinking and our perceptions of it, either you as a person that's arriving or you a person that's a part of it. If you live in the region and it's been a part of your life, right? Your whole life, like you're from um, Wasco County and third generation uh, ranchers of some sort. You know what I'm saying? And so it's not just I mean, I ain't saying it's. I mean, I guess it might be like NBA All Star Weekend to some people, but I mean, because that's a lot more exclusive to get into the NBA All Star Weekend. It's not really. It's not really a business related to being the NBA All Star Weekend. I'm trying to find a, or maybe like it's going maybe like to a political, policy conference. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
Or
right.
you know what I'm saying, or Afrotech or something. Maybe Afrotech's kind of new, but just or even like a national advocacy organization conference of some sort that where you have it's tied to a long-term part of your life that's even before maybe your age, right? It hits different. And so the town, yeah, there's people selling elephant ears and giant cheeseburgers, and they got the rides, and then they got the you got the pretty nice belts that might be handmade by that person. Then you got the ones that's like, that's probably not handmade. That's probably, wholesale, you vending, vending in a way that would be totally familiar to some of, our big brothers, but just in a
Right,
different
right.
context. Then you also got, going to the Lucchese pop up and they got, $450, $1,000, very nice Western style boots. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh man, these nice boots. They trying to get going in, check them out. Do have a seat, have a break. We got drinks in the
Right,
back.
right.
You know what I'm saying? Like all the stuff that you would associate, like, in our society, like you would be like, oh, this is wide open consumerism is there too. You know what I'm saying, at the event.
Mm,
And I ain't necessarily, I ain't saying it's bad or good. Like, everybody like to have something fly. Like it ain't just a city
that's
thing.
right.
You know what I'm saying? It just got different contexts, right? I go up in the Hamleys, talk to the hat dude, you know what I'm saying? The hats some hats they cracking. I'm like, I mean, you always wanted me a dope hat. One of these, what I'm saying, give me a big brim situation. You know what I mean? I'm out here. But you have to, you know, I mean, there was a couple things I had to put down. I looked at there was a belt. I was like, oh, man, that's a cold belt right there. It was like green. It had the pattern on it. It was like well made leather. It was just my size. I was like, man, let me get up out of this store, man. I can't do a $172
That's
belt today.
That's how they listen. That's how they get you, man. That's listen. They get you with that nice stuff. I mean, as an aside, one I was thinking just to add on, thinking as a kid, you remember when like we were framing and people would say, "Yo, you got the new Pendleton jacket, right?" Where I
Mm-hmm.
thought Pendleton was the actual thing as a kid versus it was the Eddie Bauer. It was the Eddie Bauer or Woolridge, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Woolridge did a Pendleton coat versus it was like Pendleton. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And just to think on a fashion level, how as young people and even today, if I could find one like a Pendleton is a really distinctive jacket or and coat that obviously has an origin story that is often divorced from the kind of reality of what it is, right? And so I appreciate you sharing that and also sharing the reality that yes, if you're a rancher and you did well, you might have expensive boots on.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I mean,
like
like we were talking to the, persons I travel there, like, now when you go look at the hat, check check before you fall in love with how this hat look.
right,
Check that, make sure you and the price might be able to work out because they got $100-something hat, got $200 hat, $400 hat, $3,000 hats. You know what I'm saying? I'm not in
right,
the $3,000 hat business. You know what I'm saying? But I could imagine if the same way somebody probably look at some I don't know expensive sneakers folks buy or expensive things that people buy. Those are not they're not unique to the other folks are not exempt from that and it's when you see things and the one thing I guess just as it's on the Pendleton the Pendleton Woolen Mills is named after Pendleton. I don't actually remember if there's actual mill still in Pendleton, but because there's big sheep and wool production in Eastern Oregon and Eastern Washington and Idaho. But just that's the connection to the wool, and then
to the wool. Okay.
and then the weaving, and I'm still working on this, so I know I might make an error, but there is the weaving, and that one of the things I was trying to do that I wasn't able to is trying to see if I could locate because Umatilla make them made woolen blankets and like with weaving, and then like the Pendleton that company kind of they kind of popularized it as a style, but it ain't totally theirs. Yeah, I guess is what I should say. Allegedly, just in case I'm with Pendleton out here trying to sue me or something. Saying I'm banging on them. I'm just telling you there's some controversy
right,
as it
right.
pertains to
They
the origin
try
of
to
the
sue the
wool.
limited partnership here.
That's right. I shut down my small operation. And out here besmirching our character. Like, hey, fellas, I'm just a dude thinking out loud, man. Don't take me down. Lawyers
Allegedly,
don't got to get involved in none of this. You know what I'm saying? We can talk this out, right?
allegedly.
But
I
yeah,
like
so
that. I like that. Just allegedly.
yeah. So, but it's like then it becomes this style thing, right? Like and then like the wool, you know what I'm saying, coat with the pattern and like the leather collars, and you know what I'm saying, big wool wooden buttons. You know what I'm saying? But that also ties to a vocation of like something to keep you warm. You out moving that breathes and can dry out. You out here working with animals and a vast openness that gets cold, like real cold, like bitterly windy cold in the winter at certain times of the year out in the high desert. You know what I'm saying? Because all of that is basically is high desert when you get east of the mountains here. So yeah.
Okay. So my second point is framing it, it's all fusion. And what I mean by that is this really interesting concept around food in particular. And when you think about places, you connect them to food, right? So you say like America is this, or Britain is this, or France is this. And then when you go to places and you say like their native food, where you know, as much as there's a lot of dialogue around, French food, right? And it's usually saying a lot of butter, a lot of cream, bourguignon, and a roasted chicken, right? With a glass of
Mm-hmm.
wine on the side. You recognize that in practicality, that because of colonialism, frankly, the reality of food in countries that practice colonialism is a lot different because people came back to those places and brought their food there,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So yes, there's a lot of traditional French restaurants, but there's as many, you know, falafel places, right? A falafel and any kind of handheld sandwich on a baguette and anything you would put on that sandwich is a full part of French culture now. And it's not just a ham and cheese sandwich, right?
Mhm.
It's like as many things as you can imagine in the falafel places and the African cuisine places are full. Yakatoris. One thing I didn't know is that there is a really big Japanese influence in in France. I mean, I knew
Mm.
obviously the kind of Southeast Asian influence and the influence of Vietnam and other countries, but also there's like a Japanese influence. So like sushi is huge.
Mm.
Like yeah, sushi is a huge part of like the French reality. Like it's just literally you'll be going down the street and see multiple sushi restaurants, right? Now, yeah, they might just have roast chicken or some other stuff in there, but there's a lot of people eating sushi. And so, the idea and the complexities of these countries. So just kind of like America, and when you're thinking about like what's American food, and clearly sometimes what you think is American food ain't American food. Like it either came from somewhere else or it's a creation of our own existence. Like one of my biggest challenges with this idea of what we think is Mexican food was developed on the Mexican, like what we now call the Tex-Mex border, right? Like it's not a classic like Mexican food when you're trying to eating a taco. There's no such thing a hard shell taco
Mhm.
being eaten certain places, or even in Britain, how certain curries are like the national dish, right? In just this broader conversation about what other people bring to these countries, right? And it's all created like this fusion um, that we should acknowledge, and that shouldn't be framed at like, okay, the French reality is still just this kind of a Bordeaux and a roasted chicken, but it's as much sushi or jollof rice or like these are all things that are like real parts of the French reality. And tacos, which was it was a big thing. Like the taco spots, it was taco spots everywhere. Which kind of threw me off, to be honest, right?
Yeah,
Because in
that's
some ways it felt like it kind of was like, wait, it's tacos and shit,
well,
like
it's all again going back to that kind of cartoon characterist way we get taught about the world in America, especially in our generation. It's like you with the Disney World, and they showed you at the Epcot Center that France is like this. So you're supposed to see like supposed to be baguettes and croissant and like brie
right,
with rugged another smelly cheese and some sort of uh something was but something like a soup, like a French onion soup situation, and like a dude with a beret, like waiting for you to come by and pick up your bread. Like that's what you were supposed to see. But it's like, oh, they got
right,
this tacos and like, oh, that's from like basically you're in an international city that has the
right.
whole
No, and
world
that's
in
what
it.
you really chicken place. So chicken places everywhere. Now I will say London had more chicken places than Paris. London's chicken shit was almost like surreal. Like,
Or
but you realize fried chicken, people frying chickens did not start in America. Right? I
yeah,
want to say this for everybody that's listening. People frying chickens did not have its origin in South Carolina or North Carolina. People have been frying chickens in some variation for a long time. Maybe not the way that we have done it here,
yeah, yeah,
but that it has been done.
yeah.
And yeah, you just saw so between fried chickens, tacos, and sushi, like you said, fundamentally you're in a global place. Like they're eating like everybody else, right? And so, seeing these places and getting outside of our traditional view of how we perceive food and culture via food, right? Because
Mm.
food is often one of the most diffused ways that we transfer culture and
Yeah.
have conversations about culture. So that was interesting. And just as a quick aside, we laughed about earlier. you realize how much France is obscured in the collective identity of America. Like France is just treated as somebody that was over here for like a cousin that only was at your house for like a year or two.
Mhm.
Like they didn't stay long. You know what I'm saying? Like, and they're treated like that. Like, oh yeah, they were down Louisiana. Yeah, they was up Maine. Yeah, they all went to Canada and went to Quebec and shit. You know what I'm saying? Where no, you see the influence of the French in different parts of America. So it is interesting to see that and acknowledge that there is this collective, kind of stuffing on it, and even like what we call French fries, we know are not French, right? Just like all them kind of things, like but so the French are known for, being fancy and berets and French fries versus like, anything else. And a history of colonialism,
Yeah.
often brutal. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
that that also should be noted.
Yeah. Like, we're not we're not trying to obscure the reality. We just ain't trying to focus on that today. You know what I'm saying? But absolutely, you know what I'm saying? I think, I mean, it's especially like when you really study the history of the West, like the Cote d'Ivoire, and, you know what I'm saying, which was basically like, I mean, in our modern language, they would be sort of the hustling entrepreneur tradesman who like the dude that, like, which was, totally something as I was thinking. I was like, man, I could see somebody out here with some, like, like there are people who do vending and stuff and only come out and like set up to do like make barbecue or other things just to table like at the roundup. You know what I'm saying? Because it's a big enough event that there's enough people that if you're you have a product or something like that, at least in the past, that the people, it could be advantageous for you. And it's a fancy, it's a big, just a step into the present again for a moment. The roundup itself is like a giant financial boom to the area. Like there's, hotels, but it's not that many hotels. The Umatilla, the Confederated Tribes of Umatilla has a casino and hotel and RV park, you know what I'm saying, for guests, for people visiting. So when this comes, all of that stuff is sold out. You know what I'm saying? Prices triple the regular rate, because, you know, it's a big giant gathering, and big giant gatherings everywhere where there's people mean it's commerce and stuff being sold and money moving and gambling and other things that we're not gonna talk about today.
Right.
My last thing, that just being on the experience, it's okay like to just go somewhere and be a guest sometimes. You know what I'm saying? Like we have a conversation, I think, about like how to move through the world and our values and these other things that sometimes point you to be like, almost don't be like not to be a tourist when you are in fact a tourist. Like you're there because you're coming to visit the place and maybe see some things, maybe partake in the local food or whatever they're offering, and that there's some level of, we have a weird American thing. I mean, I'm sure other folks have it too, but I was just saying, where you're like, oh, but you don't want to, like, I don't want to go nowhere and disrespect nobody. I think that's a reasonable value proposition. But also if I am literally on a trip here, like, yeah, I'm a guest, man. I mean, I'm gonna do my best to go like, oh, should I see this? Should I go see the thing over there? Like as a guest, should I go read these plaques? Should I, you know, you do get a little tired of folks. Oh, where you from? Because kind of like, all right, I'm black. Going back to that first point of places in their history, I'm clearly a 6 foot tall, black man with long hair. You're pretty sure you ain't never seen me around here before. So it's reasonable for folks to go like, oh, where you from? Like, but after a while, you'd be like, you get tired of telling people, oh, I'm from over here, because we both know the assumption is you are not from here, and this is probably your first time. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
Now,
right.
and but it's okay. Like for me, at least, there's not a lot of value in like getting all riled up about why they keep asking me where I'm from, Right now, if I was out there all the time, yeah, I would get like, yo, I live here, dog. Like, I actually live right there. Like, you see me, like,
Right, we start pointing to the place you live. Right there, man. Down the street,
you know
man.
what I'm saying? That's my spot right there,
Over
right?
by the drugstore, man.
You know what I'm saying? Over by the Rexmart, you know what I'm saying, or the Buy Mart or something. But like, go on the silly tour, and they're like, oh, there's a thing, and you can pay, and you can see a spectacle. Maybe not something that's culturally disrespectful or whatever, but go see the stuff. You know what I'm saying? If they're like, oh, you want to come back here and see the giant cattle? Like, all right, man, let me come see the giant cattle. Like, oh man, that's a longhorn cow. Look at that. Look at the horns on that big fella there, or whatever have you. You know what I'm saying? It's okay to go on the journey with stuff. You know what I'm saying? Even um, you know, sitting on the sidelines, going back, later in the evening, just to eat and kind of people watch. It's okay. Like, go do that. That's what trips and experiences are for. Like, now if you want to have a deeper connection, right? Like maybe you come back every year and you start to know people, and or place becomes a regular place that you frequent, where you start to build, a deeper relationship with the place and the people in the place, right? And that's cool too. But it's okay if it's your first time going somewhere. Yo, man, just be on the trip, man. Like, go read the little plaques that they like. Oh, we sell this is the local favorite, snack or whatever. Go eat, try the snack if it connects with your dietary, laws. You know what I'm saying? I ain't saying go eat no, swine if you don't eat swine like me. Like, what I mean? That don't mean you got to pass Majestic over there eating brie ham and brie sandwiches. You know what I'm saying? Let me find out.
I damn sure did get a pass, Jack, but I did find the vegan charcuterie.
I about to say, I bet
And
you did.
listen, I found all that shit, man, and I ain't gonna tell you, it was amazing. They had the vegan champagne, because you recognize how much wine. I mean, if it's an issue for you, does go through either fish gills, um, or sometime beef. And when it's getting strained. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so over there, and you find it here, you can find like wines that were done a certain way that they are like vegan, and you know that.
No.
But yeah, like there, anywhere, you know, they had like just vegan, co-ops and markets just full of like cheese and all the stuff that they would normally eat, right? So for someone that's in Paris, and Paris has not always gotten a good reputation as a kind of vegan destination, but it has definitely kind of changed recently. Um, my third point is, you know, and it's a conversation we've had, and maybe for some people this is not a question, but I think of it a lot as blackness beyond hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
And you know being in Paris, you're just reminded that there is, frankly, just blackness outside of the American context. Because a lot of times, if you're in America, you go to vacation on places that kind of have some proximity to America, right? Or you might go to Toronto, which is kind of like could feel like America light, like
Mm-hmm.
America without the problems, but with transportation, like good transportation and less crime, right?
Yeah.
So you could feel like these places are like kind of still American-ish, where and even London, you could kind of, it's not America. It's clear. However, the English is the spoken language, right? So you still can frame much of your existence with like people speak the same language you do. Where there's like people don't speak the language. They will shift for you because they're so used to taking American dollars and English dollars and pounds rather. So
Mm-hmm.
they'll look at you, and especially to your point, if you're a 6 foot black man with locks, you might look like you're from. I might look like I'm from, either France or some variation of a country that someone speaks French.
Mm-hmm.
Until I say I say something in there like, "Oh, motherfucker, you are clearly from America," or like I try to say bonjour, and I realize like, you know, when folks are saying bonjour to each other, they're saying it in this very light way, like bonjour,
Bonjour.
bonjour,
Mm-hmm.
and then like
You like
we have like
bonjour.
an American, like yeah, bonjour. Motherfuckers like, Okay, you speak English, huh? Okay. What do you need? Or another thing I was doing was being like mercy, like says just saying mercy, like mercy beaucoup. Like they're like, thank you very much. Like I felt like Prince Akeem and stuff. Like every time you say that, thank you very much, thank you very much, thank you very much. So you get that, but you realize that there is a sense of global blackness beyond the American gaze. And I want to say this beyond especially the current gaze, the current state that we're in America, which is the gaze of being black as identified within the world of white supremacy. Right? Meaning like, okay, America is grappling to some degree. America or parts of America or cities or institutions are grappling with the role with the impact of white supremacy, racism, and capitalism, and all of those three kind of like touching on people, right? Touching in their confluence. But when you're outside of that, you then see that other people are existing, not necessarily in that gaze. Like their gaze isn't in the American gaze of white supremacy. It might be in a relationship of their country to the French, right? But it's not necessarily quite the same. And so you just see something different. It just looks different. And there's also this relationship of people to the country of, possible countries of their origin or countries with their family. So, if you're related to a quote unquote Black American experience, they ain't been here that long. They ain't been there that long. Now obviously some people in France have been there a long time. Black folks been in Paris a long time. So that's not to say that, but it's different. I'll frame it like this. It's like different for somebody from like that family went to Boston with Christmas addicts versus somebody whose family came from the islands in the 50s. You're having a different Black experience.
Yeah.
Right. And Blackness is not a monolith. Right. So there's a different Black experience. And so there I was able to really feel what it meant not to be constrained by being Black in an American gaze. And I think that's important for young Black people to do, to even frame their experience. I mean, when we think about what it meant for, a lot of our artists, to travel. And in France is where you get, Black folks from the Harlem Renaissance, you get the Negritude movement and the Negrismo movement, all meeting in France, right? All meeting in Paris, frankly. And kind of having that framework for how they see global Blackness. So you could reasonably argue that France is one of the stools of how Black folks perceive themselves on a global level, starting in the early 20th century. And so, that's just important. It's important to not, that Jay-Z is not the biggest part of your conversation, right? Like we're not debating if Jay-Z is a good capitalist or a bad capitalist. Like, because they're not in London, they're not in Paris debating if Jay-Z is a good capitalist or a bad capitalist. There's some other shit happening. There's some other things that people are thinking about. And, I just think it's really important for Black folks, brown folks, again, because there's other histories of folks from South America moving to France and Paris and having lives there, and the Asian role in Paris. So I just think it's important for all people to actually have an experience in a space that does not define you by the American gaze, and you don't allow yourself to define other people by the American gaze. And that's the frame I'm using in hip hop. Like, don't use that lens of the world to frame everyone, although you may see some things that look just like you're in America. Like, there were some strips that looked just like you was on 116th Street in Harlem, right? Like, very much the same. So there is this kind of global diaspora, but at the same time, allow yourself to get out of that state. And I actually recognize that even when you're striving to like fight the systems, there is a certain stress and a certain duress that you're under, that when you even step outside of that for a second, you're not under that same duress. you're not under that same stress of that gaze or of that particular struggle. And I think it's important for our people to acknowledge that we can exist outside of that as we struggle towards making change. That there is a world in that space outside of that.
Or, or, yeah. Nah, thank you. That's dope. I think we always put a premium on the importance of your movement, the physical movement, so that you can have the mental space to see some things that might be harder to see when you're in the mix of it. So, yeah.
And I want to say one thing, man. Get passports, man.
Yeah.
Get passports. Don't be messing up your kids' credit, so they got some stuff going on. They can't get credit cards and stuff, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, straight up, man. Like, one of the brothers. I want to give a shout out to some folks in particular. It's a brick and mortar location called Little Africa, and at this place in Little Africa, which the broader kind of neighborhood of where West Africans came and North Africans came. It's called Little Africa. So it's like a
Mhm.
board. It's a really interesting bordering of like one side, all North African, Moroccan, Mauritanian,
Mhm.
Tunisian, and then one side is like all West African,
Mhm.
right? And folks who came from like Haitian. So you just see a lot. Like it confounds the space. You see Jamaicans, then the Nigerians are there. It confounds your vantage point of like who's where. But shout out to Jacqueline and Patrick. Jacqueline is a sister from Cameroon who lives in Paris, and then brother Patrick is actually from Louisiana, and him and his wife and their children moved to Paris. So we had a really, really good conversation and dialogue over a couple of days, just about like talking to people, talking to someone from Cameroon who lives in Paris that had been to the States and their viewpoints of how the Black community functioned in the States. And then someone who's from the States who then moved to Paris and talks about that experience. It was fascinating. And it's kind of the dialogue that we talk about at some point that was happening for us globally that I don't think is happening.
Mhm.
We do see some culture going back and forth. I would say the whole Afro beat idea, which is kind of a misnomer. I don't know, maybe that's showing my age, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's Afrobeat because Fela Kuti and Tony Allen did Afrobeat. That was a thing. That's
Yeah.
like if hip hop did, you start just calling it something totally different because like 40 years later, someone else did some variation and they rapped, and it's
Right.
like, but that's not the actual thing.
Yeah.
But anyway, I digress. But like you do see the flow of culture coming to America and the diasporic culture influencing America in ways that you didn't see for a long time. It always looked like a one-way street. Um, but yeah, if you get it, and this plays into your third point, Justin, I'll stop. Be a guest. If you go to somewhere like Paris, go get a tour. Like it's fine. Like go get a tour and see something that you're not like it's not going to show up for you. You're just not going to see it, right?
Mhm.
So if someone can take you and show you all the streets that have to do with like you know Black French artists or Black French freedom fighters, go see it, right?
Mhm.
Like they got Toussaint Louverture Street, like you know what I mean, like Rue did Toussaint Louverture, like all this history does connect. So it's okay to be a guest, and if you're sincere about learning, about global Blackness, it's fine to do that. So
Yeah. Word up. Word up. So, hey, well, thank you. You know what I mean, for sharing. You know what I'm saying?
no, thank you. And now, man, now you got me want to go to this, go to one of these towns, man, and be like you and be on the flute, be in the parade,
Hey
man.
man,
Just so y'all know, Justin took it to another level, y'all. Just be in the parade, Jack, in the rodeo parade, man. We went from a log cabin to all this, man.
hey man, just he say walking, living my truth, or walking, whatever they be saying. One of them things, one of them sayings people be saying. You know what I'm saying? I'm doing that thing. You know what I mean? It's out here. It's taking it all in. But I appreciate you, man. With that, I would say peace.
Peace.
Thank you for listening to Good Brothers. Thank you to my good brother, I'm Majestic. The Ash Oldhead podcast is a creative project started by me, featuring me, and at least in this instance, my good brother, I'm Majestic, and others, and more to come at some point in the future. You can support the podcast by listening, rating, and subscribing wherever you listen, and by sharing wherever you like to share things. So social media, emails, you got a newsletter, you know what I'm saying, postcards, whatever it is you do, please feel free to please share the podcast. You can also support the podcast by becoming a subscriber on Patreon. Just search up Justice Rajee, and when you find it, do the thing, and there you go. I'm not going to add a whole lot. Thank you for listening again. Be safe. Peace.